When I grew up, my parents never really believed in taking me to church. It was never pushed. It was never really a thing. I just knew that it existed. Immediately after high school, I enlisted in the United States Army and left for basic training 11 days after I graduated. My faith journey, I would say, probably began in the Army during basic training, probably not for the right reasons, but it was a way to get away from the yelling for an hour. I went to Fort Leonard Wood for basic training out in Missouri. I did my advanced individual training in Columbia, South Carolina. And immediately after that, I went to Fort Carson, Colorado, where 3 months later, I was deployed to Afghanistan at 18 years old. 9 months out of school, and I was overseas. You know, overseas, when you're deployed, your chaplain likes to check up on you. And we had a really good chaplain. I, for the life of me, can't remember his name, but I can picture him in my head. But he was just a kind soul who truly cared. Transition to civilian life was a little rough. I mean, you go from an everyday rigid schedule to you're free, essentially. I had friends that went to church. I explored different churches, but none of them really felt right. You know, I always felt like I was going in somewhere and being judged for my past, or, you know, I have tattoos and I felt that people judged me for that. And I just never really walked into a church where people had their arms open. In between my transition of jobs and career choices, I met my wife, Alysa, who grew up traditionally Catholic. And while we were going through and getting married and going through all of those steps in our lives, she was persistent on wanting to find a church that I would enjoy because she wanted our children to be baptized. And we tried a couple here and there. I wasn't necessarily the most willing participant in that. We went with some family friends. Pastor was going on about mental health. And being a veteran and going through what I've been through, I deal with mental health issues. You know, there's a lot of people that do. He was going over depression and PTSD and anxiety and how that's just the devil and you just need to pray it away. And I walked out of that church with such a bad taste in my mouth. And I never went back to that church. I joined Steamfitters Local 601, and Christ Church was one of the first accounts that was given to me as an HVAC service tech. So I came here, I started doing my thing. I started talking to people. The one person that really solidified my curiosity in Christ Church was Sara with CC Kids, you know, and she was there and we were just talking, and I had brought up, you know, baptism and having children and never really finding a spot. And she kind of planted that seed by telling me that Christ Church does baptisms, and that's really what my wife wanted. I went home and I sat down with my wife and I said, I think we should try this church out. And she was flabbergasted. I don't think she knew what to say because it was coming from me. We went a few times, explored. We liked it. The one thing that really stuck out to me was our first Easter service. And we left the Good Friday service. I said, we got to go back on Sunday. And she didn't know what to say. And not long after that, we were members of the church, and my daughter was baptized here. I never in my life thought that I would serve or volunteer at a church. I just never did. And I think the way that I felt welcomed and that I felt appreciated and valued here really helped. You're never done. You're never finished with your faith. You know, and there's always more to expand on and more to learn, which I just thought that I would be the kind of guy that would go to church on Sunday because I had to and go home because it kept the peace. But I actually look forward to coming here.